Hey guys, I hope you guys are doing well today. Today I wanted to show you how I make my chicken broth and how I pressure can it. It is super easy. I was intimidated for many years, and then when I started making my own broth, I'm like, why do we overcomplicate this? It's supposed to be easy. So anyway, I wanted to show you guys what it looks like, how we make it. We make it in the Instapot because it's just super easy. I can walk away. I don't have to sit on the stove and watch it. You can make this exact recipe. It's not even a recipe. It's just an idea, a guide, and inspiration. But you can make it in the crock pot as well, which our Instapot is also a crock pot. So if you have that, use it as a crock pot. The benefits of making your broth in a crock pot. Here is the broth quote-unquote recipe. I add a chicken carcass, and these are from chickens that we raised. And every time that we cut the chicken into parts, or we would actually roast the chicken whole, I would actually save that carcass and I would freeze it because I knew I wanted to make broth, but I just didn't have the time to do it right then at that moment. So there I'm gonna add some, you can add 3, 4, 5 sticks of carrots, 3, 4, 5 sticks of celery. It really doesn't matter. It's up to your taste preference. I do add a little bit of apple cider vinegar because the apple cider vinegar will help raise the pH in there, and it will help pull that collagen and a lot of the nutrients out. You don't need but a splash, so maybe a tablespoon, maybe up to 2. I don't add enough to where I taste it. I just add it to where it can pull and draw that collagen out so that we can have a more nutritious, healthful, gelatinous broth. So make sure when you do fill this up with water, I'm gonna leave it, I don't know, maybe half an inch below the max line because that chicken will produce its own juices. The veggies have water. So I just wanna leave a little bit of gap here so that this can pressurize correctly. I almost forgot the salt. You can choose to add salt. You can leave it unsalted. Right here, I have our herb salt. We just take our herbs. Here's a big twig of rosemary. I can take that out. We take some good sea salt in a food processor with fresh herbs. 50% fresh herbs, 50% sea salt. Whatever herbs you want. There's some basil in here, some thyme, some rosemary. So just good herbs and seasonings. So you can see the big old chunks. You can pulverize it smaller if you want. But I'm going to go ahead and season this with some good, 1 to 2 teaspoons to taste. Obviously don't taste it right now because raw chicken, but that's all I do. You can add garlic cloves here. You can add garlic cloves with the skin and all. Remember, you're going to strain this. So people use onions. You can use the onion skins. You can use like a quarter of an onion, root end and all. You don't need to clean them. You don't need to wash them. I would prefer using organic, of course, but when you make broth, it's really supposed to come from all the scraps. So you just want to make sure that if you don't have any on hand right now, you can always, as you buy stuff and as you have scraps, freeze them, put them in a bag in your freezer, and just keep collecting, whether it's, celery, the bottoms of celery, the root ends, or the tops of celery. You can collect those. You can collect the carrot skins. You can collect the onion skins, the garlic skins, so on and so forth, and all of that stuff will flavor your broth beautifully. It'll give it a beautiful color, so on and so forth. So really, it's just scraps. That really is what broth is and what it used to be, and it's supposed to be cheap. So a lot of these really clean, really healthy broths that you buy from the store are so expensive, and you can make broth with leftovers, with scraps, with things that you may have already on hand, if not that you could collect and keep. A lot of people throw these things away already, so don't throw them away and make beautiful, beautiful broth. The benefits of making your broth in a crock pot are that you actually can pull out more of the collagen. The heat is lower, so you can retain more nutrients. The collagen, I believe it's above 240 degrees, begins to somewhat break down. So if you want a very gelatinous broth, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It is somewhere along the lines of 240 degrees. I can't remember the exact degree-age, but Either way, at a certain temperature, the collagen will start to break down and it won't gel. Your broth at the end won't gel as well or not completely. I make my broth two ways. I make it in the Instapot. I sometimes, depending if I'm being a little more impatient and I want it done quicker, I will cook it in my Instapot for 45 minutes on high pressure. And the reason I do that is because I just don't want to go to the store and buy broth. And a lot of the broths that I buy at the store, one, are expensive, and two, are way, just not as good as broths that you make at home. So I sometimes, out of quickness, because if I'm running low on my home canned broth and I want to get a few batches going, I want to pressure can them, all of that takes time. And sometimes I just don't have the time to make really good, just gelatinous broth that just sits for hours on end. And I want a good broth that's still healthful. May not be the most amazing broth that I could potentially make, but it's still so much better than the store, and it's still really good. Taste-wise, it's really good. I'm just saying more so of getting that gelatinous, that gel. So if you do make it in your crock pot, you will have a better gel if you put the same ingredients that I show you. You put it in the crock pot 6 to 8 hours, you can leave it up to 12, so on and so forth. Some people do more. So anyway, that's the benefit. When you cook it low and slow, you retain more nutrients. When you cook it higher, you don't retain as many. But the flavor's still incredible. And when I'm in a pinch, I don't want to go to the store and buy something. I want to save money. So I try to crank some batches that are really fast. Speed it up a little! And then later on, when I have a little bit of a stock, I will go ahead and make my low and slow broth so that then I can get the nutrient intake up again. So the one way I do it again is 45 minutes in the Instapot at high pressure. And, that takes about an hour and a half sometimes, depending on the Instapot and how you make it. And then I can put it in my quart jars, and then I could put it in my digital canner, and I can go ahead and can that. The other method is doing it at low pressure. So I do it on the Instapot at low pressure for 2 hours, and then I get a better gel out of that when I do it low and slow. And today I do have a little more time because I'm going outside and I'm doing stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and set it for 2 hours, and then I have some time tonight to can. So that's why I wanted to show you guys the whole process. Here, I am going to put it on manual. And then when I do manual, it's either on low pressure or high pressure. You can see here, high pressure, low pressure. I'm gonna set it for low pressure for 2 hours. It's gonna be 120 minutes. And once this is done, I can go ahead and pressure can the broth so that I have broth on hand whenever I need broth. But let me show you here. This is our chicken broth I canned 923. Beautiful. It's slightly, obviously it's liquidy, but I can tell in there it has a thicker texture, not like a watery texture at all. It has a more fatty consistency. You can even see a layer of fat. I sometimes strain out the fat if I feel like I just don't want to put it in the broth. Sometimes I leave it. In this case, I just felt like leaving it because when I add it to my soups and stews, I actually like a little bit of that extra fat layer on top. It makes it taste so much deeper and so much more flavorful. You can see here in the bottom the little chickeny bits. Those are some of the seasonings, some of the herb salts, so on and so forth. But this broth that we pressure canned is absolutely amazing. The jar is a little over 1 inch headspace because it did siphon out a little bit, and I'll show you what that means. But this is the product that I'm looking for to have. I have about 12 quart jars right now, and we use this for soups, for stews, anything you use broth for, making gravies. We thicken it with arrowroot powder. This thickened alone will be a delicious gravy. It has the herb salt in there and the little chicken fat that really gives it a deep, deep flavor. So anyway, this is what we're aiming for, and I will show you the progress. When the Instapot is done, I can show you what that looks like. Something I did forget to mention is a lot of the times I'll actually run my broth through the Instapot twice so that I can get 2 batches. So the same process, I will leave the chicken carcass in there. I'll just add more carrots, more celery, a little more salt, and then water again. And I'll just run it again, and I'll get a second batch. Okay, guys, so clearly I left this finish. It naturally released. It's been 51 minutes, so it's just been on warm for 51, 52 minutes now because I was outside and I'm just coming in now. So it has naturally released. We're gonna go ahead and open this guy up. Beautiful looking brothy broth. I'm going to go ahead and get my jars, strain this into my jars, and we'll get going. I'm going to do quart-sized jars. Hello again. I changed clothes because I was outside, so I am in my outside clothes. But my, not Instapot, my Presto digital canner, which is what I'm going to use to can this. You can use your stovetop pressure canner if you have one, or a digital one. Mine fits 5 quart-size jars. So I'm going to be able to hopefully get 5. I think I might get 4 quarts. Yeah, 4, because the Instapot is about a gallon. It might be like 3.5. We'll see how much I get. So I'm going to go ahead and get it in my jars, and then we can go ahead and pressure can it. So let's do that. All right, guys, I moved my station to this little corner here in my kitchen because I have a butcher block countertop here in the section. That's my little compost bin over there. And I didn't want to put my bowl that's going to be it's going to have hot broth. I didn't want to put a hot bowl on my quartz countertop because quartz can't take the heat that well. So I'm going to go ahead and scoot this over pretty close to the Instapot just to make sure that I get my broth here. And I'm going to go ahead and just dump my broth in here and begin to strain it. So you can strain it right into the jars. I couldn't find my smaller strainer, so I didn't want everything just pouring out of there. So this is the beautiful chicken broth. You can see it in here, what that's looking like. The bones, I can actually, even with my ladle, I can actually break apart the bones, and that's a good sign. You want everything to just be break apart beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and just get a little more of this strained. Once I get enough, I'll start to pour these into my jars. I did wash my jars already. They, typically when I wash them with hot water. I don't really ever put them in the Instapot or in the, I keep saying that, Instapot. I don't put them in the digital canner to warm them up. I don't typically sterilize, I just wash them. And then they're kind of a little warm. And then I just put my hot broth right in them. And that is warm enough. Never really had a jar crack or break because of that. So I just keep doing it. A lot of the times, if you wait for this to cool down, the fat on top will form and it will solidify. And then you will have, because it's really oily on top, you can separate it. Or you can use one of those fat separators where you pour the entire broth into that funnel and you just pour most of the broth and then leave that layer of fat out. So you're totally welcome to do whatever you want. I can mine with the fat in there because I like it. I think it adds good flavor. Otherwise, when I've kept the fat by itself and I stored it in the fridge, I never really use it. It's called a schmaltz. You use it like butter, you cook with it, but I just find myself not using it and it goes rancid and bad, and I don't know. I use it better when it's canned. So up to you. You can leave it out, you can skim it off, whatever you like. I cannot find the funnel for the life of me, so I am going to wing it. And typically I, get my funnels and the wide mouth funnel for mason jars, and works beautifully and great, good stuff, all that stuff, but can't find them. So I'm just going to try to get it all in there. And then I'm going to make sure I wipe the rims off really, really well. I'm going to see how many jars I can get out of this. I'm going to go ahead and get these all poured. And we'll meet ya. I'll meet you back. All right, guys. So we got 4 quarts, which is a gallon, which is pretty much what I guesstimated, if you will. I got a cloth. I just dampened the tip of it, clean cloth with a little bit of vinegar and water, and I'm going to go ahead and wipe all the rims, put my lids on. But before I show you that, you can see right here, look at all that fat in this first quart, and then this one just has a little bit of fat. I don't mind that. That's going to solidify when it cools down. Notice the light color in this broth. That is because the carcass that I used, the chicken carcass, was raw. When you use a roasted or cooked, and you have other things in there, especially like onion skins and garlic, it will make this broth really, really deep. Rich color, a yellow, almost even brown color. But this broth right here is going to be amazing. We haven't tasted it. Let's take a taste test. I did not even think to taste it, but I made it many times, so I know it's going to be great. I have a tablespoon measure because that's all I could find. Excellent. It tastes like a really good chicken broth when you make it. I made it this way here with the raw chicken. I can definitely tell a taste in the flavor. It's not as nutty. It's not as deep and rich. It's like a lighter taste, which is absolutely fine. I just didn't want to take the time to roast the carcass and then make the broth and then, it's just a lot. So this is perfect. It's actually a little more neutral tasting. When I make a chicken soup, sometimes I like a bit of a lighter broth because some broths that I've made are so deep and flavorful that it's more like a concentrate. So I end up using about half chicken broth and half water because the flavor sometimes can dominate and it tastes too chickeny. Not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes I want the other things to sink, like the veggies or whatever I put in the soup. Anyway, hope that makes sense. But this broth is perfect on the lighter side. You do get a richer broth when you use bones that, the roasted and whatnot. But just thought I would mention that in case you were wondering how to get a deep, richer broth, something like that. So you can kind of customize that based on your preference. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just wipe these rims. Just like that. I'm going to give it a good clean. And then lids. I got brand new lids right here. I use new lids every time, and then after I open it, I throw them away. I do keep the rings. Here, clean rings. Finger tight, so just enough. Literally, I'm doing it one-handed, so I can't tighten it that crazily because I'm not holding it. Okay, let's go head over to the canner, get this going. All right, guys, so I am over by the Instapot. I got it on here. I'm going to hit pressure can. I'm going to select 25 minutes for quart broths. Now I got to insert jars. I'm going to tell it I insert it so the water starts warming up. I filled this up with water to the line where it says put my trivet in. You can tell this thing is well loved. And then I'm going to go ahead and insert. This is room temp, if not slightly warm water from my sink. And then I'm just going to put my hot jars in here. Putting in my hot jars one by one. I keep saying I'm by the Instapot. I'm by a pressure cooking device, which is the canner in this case. So this is setting to warm. I put my 4 jars in. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my lid on. Make sure your pressure regulator is off. You don't want that on yet. You're going to go ahead and seal this guy. And then this is going to go ahead and go to warm. Once it warms through, it gets to temperature, it will go to heat. And then after it's heated up, ready to go, then it's going to start to count down the time for 25 minutes. I will show you this once it's cooled down and the whole story. And then we will see the pressure canned product. I'm not sure what happened with the outro that I did, but I pulled the jars out of the pressure canner, and for some reason the camera didn't record the whole situation. So I'm just going to show you over here. I took the jars out of the pressure canner and they're looking great. So just pretend that I lifted them all and I placed them right here later. But this is essentially what they're looking like. They're still warm. They were bubbling pretty crazy, but now they're pretty still. Let's see. This one right here has yet to seal, sealed. So we just have one more that needs to seal yet, and then that's about it. But you can see the little fat cap or the little oily part in the top. When this cools down completely, it will get solidified. All of them have a little bit of fat, which I like. And that's about it. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope that was some easily digestible information, but hopefully you're not scared to make broth anymore and can it if you want to can it. If not, just make it and don't can it. But again, just put it in the Instapot. You can do it 45 minutes if you want a quick broth and just get it done. Or you can do it for 2 hours and you still get a decently quick broth. Or you can do it in your crock pot, low and slow, and get really good gelatinous broth. Either way, pretty easy. And I did forget to mention you can do it with beef bones also, the same recipe, or with any other bones you can think of that you make broth with. So hopefully that was helpful, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.